Good day and welcome to our weekly educational rounds here at Sinclair. My name is Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist here at Sinclair, and today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, and on my left would be
Sarah. I'm a student shadowing here.
And on my right would be
Mike Sorg, at Sorgatron on Twitter if you want to follow me. I'm actually the web director here at Sinclair. So if you see the tweets and the Facebooks and everything like that, that's me. And we do a lot with the video, and I'm usually behind the scenes here on Mondays here at noon for the educational grand rounds.
Mike is the sorcerer, or Mike is the wizard that makes all these things possible happen. As of yet, I have yet to delve into that pond.
Well,
so tell us a little bit about your background, Mike, and your association.
Well, I've been here since at the end of 2010, I think, and I'm very much into technology. We're just talking about like my cool new toy on my wrist here with the Pebble watch and everything. But I'm very into technology. I have been for forever. It's kind of turned into my path, doing a lot of video work,
obsession,
a little bit of a obsession, but at least I get to turn my obsession into a career. So, and I think that's what everybody should, kind of aspire to, in what they do. But yeah. So very involved with that kind of stuff, and figuring out ways to bring messages like what we to the web. And very very involved in things in the area, and a line of podcasts. Over on Sorg, trying to.
So could you share with us a little bit about your experiences at Sinclair and how they perhaps have influenced your way of thinking?
Well, it's been interesting since I've been here, trying to convey that message, and of course, reaching a topic and like when I first got here, we I was listening about DBT and Dear Man and all that kind of stuff, and I've kind of absorbed it over the years, and it's really kind of helped me kind of deal with life, especially being kind of an independent worker, an independent freelancer, and dealing with all the ups and downs that you're going to have in that kind of situation. It helps me kind of get through that and deal with things as they come to me.
And you had mentioned to me before that there was something in your life, some type of emotional situation that you wanted to talk about.
Well, there's several, but specifically one. Well, I actually got to. I don't get to travel too much, especially not for like work kind of things, like going to shoot documentaries and stuff. And I actually had not been barely. I don't think I've left my time zone in about 20 years now I think about it. But so my in-laws actually moved out to California, and we decided finally we're going to get out there since they moved out a couple years ago for Christmas, and I was going to go to California on my first ever flight. I was afraid of heights, let alone flying, and the idea, it was completely new to me. Dealing with that. And it was very interesting because as I got closer to it, I started thinking about the things that we talk about here week to week on the podcast and in conversations and online and everything. And I started using some of those techniques. I was very, and it was very like irrational. I was like, okay, this is happening. Now I have to wrap my head around it, and I'm going to be okay with it. And I got to think about how many flights go out every day, and there's no problem. And then I'm sitting there, and the worst part was the waiting. The like hour, you get early at the airport, getting there about an hour and a half in advance, and just sitting there waiting for it. And I see the plane pull up, and we're on a Southwest flight. Those are small planes. I expected something bigger. So when I'm looking at the wings, and they're like wavering like up and down as the plane moves and pulls in to dock, and like I want to be up there in that little thing, So it didn't help me going into it. But as we went, I actually put together. There's a couple of things that I did. The taking off, I guess taking off and landing is probably the scariest part. Still working on the landings. Last one back to Pittsburgh was kind of rough. But and also like understanding what's going on around you, and I'll let myself listen a little bit to know like, okay, that's normal to hear that. Like nobody's panicking when I heard this clonk, for instance. But I set myself up a little bit of a playlist for takeoffs, and it worked pretty good the first time, just to like keep me with it. I'm not looking out the window. First 3 songs on the Macklemore album. Anybody's familiar with that? It's a really good kind of upbeat, kind of energetic kind of stuff to get you going. As I went and as we're taking off, if you've ever, and I never realized their logo. It's like this little wing thing and a heart in the middle. Never noticed that. I got very familiar with that logo because anytime I had any problems, I just stared straight ahead. My wife had actually been out to California last year, so she was very conscious of, okay, we're going to sit by the wing, then the turbulence won't be felt as much. A little tip for flying. So we're, I don't know, maybe 10 rows back from the front of the plane. It never went further 4 flights because we had stop-offs in Las Vegas both ways. And just stared at that, like completely locked on that logo, and just like let my music go, and just kind of, cleared my head, and everything was cool. And I released the death grip on my wife's hand a little bit, and for a bit, it's over the other Rockies, it seems, and anytime like, and I really wish I read about turbulence before I went on the flight, because I finally did like a couple days ago and realized what it was and what happens. And I think I would have been a little bit better if I understood the process going in there. So because I wanted to go in blind, because like I felt like if I got into reading about the airplanes and how they work and what's the plane I'm going to be on, I think I would have overanalyzed it. And I was a little concerned about that, The other tip I have personally is not to be somewhere I can see the wing move, because it's unsettling me to see the wing flexing while you're 40,000 feet in the air to me. So, but I got through it. I always have a little bit of anxiety, I think, going up to it, but if I have a reason to get on a plane tomorrow to go do a job or something, or something else I wanted to do, those getaway flights, I think I'm past that I can get on it. Got easier as I went.
So you have what you're expressing. You have some very vivid memories of that. Describe that to me. You're all there.
Oh yes. It was under 2 weeks ago, and I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it. And even just being up in the air, and my wife pointed out the window. I wasn't ready for either way.
So you were actually participating in your life, right?
I was. Yeah, exactly.
And you weren't perhaps time traveling into the past and the future. You were right there.
No, it was great. We had like about a week and a half out there, so there was like I cleared my deck of all work and everything, so there wasn't much to think about. And I brought some stuff on like my iPad to read and a book and everything, and that was it. I said I didn't even get internet. I had audio. They had some streaming beats on there, so I could pull that up if I got tired of stuff on my iPod. It was pretty good. It was pretty good, and just. It's up there, I recommend anybody just to fly just to see out the window. It was pretty fantastic. Clouds and seeing other planes. Once in a while, you see another plane going the other direction and seeing it speeding along, 400 miles per hour. So and realize, holy crap, I'm going 400 miles per hour. And it was a pretty cool experience.
And what you're talking about, Mike, is dealing with fear.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole lot of words dealing with fear. Perhaps you could share some of those with us, Sarah.
Some words of fear would be fear, anxiety, apprehension, dread, edginess, fright, horror, hysteria, jumpiness, nervousness, overwhelmed, panic, shock, tenseness, terror, uneasiness, and worry.
You bet. And when we do here at Seclair, quite often we deal with people dealing with the two main things that we deal with here are depression, and we deal with anxiety. And when we're dealing with anxiety and when we're dealing with worry, what we're dealing with is the underlying base and foundation of fear. And fear is an emotion. Are all emotions bad, Sarah? No. And sometimes we view some bad for us, like fear, like anger, sadness, those type of emotions. However, they're just simply emotions. And simply because are you your emotions, or emotions, and emotions can be very helpful. Mike, did you ever on the street and perhaps you see maybe a dog there that's frothing at the mouth, and that fear can be helpful, can it not?
Right. I especially experienced that a lot. I went to school at the Art Institute downtown Pittsburgh, and I'm from the middle of nowhere. And there's a lot of being aware of being in the city, and making sure you're not putting yourself in a bad situation as you're walking at 10:30 at night to your bus stop across downtown. It was very, very aware of that. A lot of anxiety just about that.
Oh, and that fear can also be helpful. So Sarah, when you're driving here, especially this morning, I guess there was some iciness, and maybe you would like to drive 120 miles an hour. Perhaps fear might stop you from doing that.
Yeah.
And that can be a wonderful thing. So what we deal with here is, how do we deal with fear? And Mike, you shared some of the ways that people deal with fear. And one of the ways that we deal with fear, or any particular type of emotion, is to be able to identify and label overwhelming emotions without responding to them. Okay, without responding to them. Here at Sinclair, we don't teach thought blocking techniques. We don't get into that type of cognitive behavioral therapy. What we do is we ask people to embrace, and we ask people to be flexible, and we ask people to dance with them. Identifying and labeling emotions, we can't deal with them unless we know what's right in front of us. Have you ever been to the beach, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the waves come in?
Yes.
You ever stood out when the waves come in?
Yes.
Yes. And waves are like emotions. Waves are like life. They come in. And, sometimes when we try to block those waves, did you ever see people standing up in front of the waves? Tough guy, I'm going to stand up in front of this wave. Well, generally what happens?
You get knocked down?
You can get knocked down. So, and we can allow that in life too. We can allow the waves, we can allow the emotions of our life to knock us down. Can we not, Sarah? Absolutely. So, and I'm sure perhaps, Mike, you've done this, maybe Sarah, you've done it, and we've seen people do it, where when you get out on the wave, you stand out there, you maybe raise your arms, you become a little loosey-goosey, and you ride those waves. What we do is we allow the power of those emotions, we allow the power of those waves, and we dance with them, become more flexible. Actually, we use them. We use them, and again, that's a way of dealing with life. So what you're talking about, Mike, is rather than approaching this flight with a fear-based mind, you began to approach it with a wise mind, and perhaps with a little more of a knowledge-based mind. Can you talk about that?
Oh, and one aspect I've adopted over the last few years is kind of if I'm afraid of it. Especially with my business, if I'm afraid to do something, if I'm afraid to get in front of a crowd, if I'm afraid to reach out to a potential client or something, that's like a sign that I'm going in the right. Like that's a sign of well, that's something else to conquer, and that's how I kind of took this flight too. Because it was a long-standing thing. It's like, well, you're gonna have to go and do something, whether it's beach travel or Disney World. I'm not driving down there. It's a little bit of a hike for something like that. And I just kind of need to expand that. And that was really kind of the all-around mentality to do this. There's just a lot of for this one, I think a lot of environmental feedback for me to deal with. The turbulence. There was a lot of that versus I'm going to try to do this kind of project and that kind of experience. So,
well, sure. And experience anxiety. Often, many experiences of fear that go along with those, Mike. And perhaps, Sarah, you could list some of the most common ones that people associate with that type of fear and anxiety.
A lot of common ones would be a fast heartbeat, breathlessness, choking sensation, muscles tensing, clenching teeth, the urge to scream or call out, feeling nauseated, butterflies in your stomach, feeling your hair standing on end and getting cold, wanting to run away or avoid things.
I think I experienced most of those. Yeah.
So tell us, Mike, you shared some of the things that you did. So how did you rather decide to stop blocking the wave and decide to participate in it?
As far as just kind of, well, I think the music, not so much blocked, but assisted, for instance. Because if you've taken off in a flight, there's a big rush with that. And it kind of went along the type of music that was kind of riding the wave at the time. And again, kind of once I was over the fact, okay, I'm up here, okay, I'm here, looking out the window more, participating in that, looking around to see, I'm always a very analytical person. The problem is, here's another fear thing maybe. If I'm standing too long in line for the steel phantom at Kennywood, I'm thinking about all the things that can go wrong during this. So I'm left to my own devices, and I start analyzing a little too much. And that was really the big thing, like to start looking at it and like, oh, how does this work? And oh, okay, so there you have to do this. And I'm watching the little flight tracker app and seeing what they're doing with our altitude as they're talking about, okay, we're going to have to avoid some turbulence, and seeing that we dropped about 5,000 feet, and really kind of, analyzing to that point, but stopping myself before I get to that steel phantom situation, right? Especially considering where I was and allowing that. So kind of recognizing my limits, in my own head.
Well, sure. And here at Sinclair, one of the modalities that we use is dialectical behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And we deal with mindfulness, we deal with the stress tolerance, interpersonal relationship skills, and emotion regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're talking about, Mike, is the stress tolerance skills are not to be used on a continuous basis. They're to be used to identify, pull yourself away from the situation so you can begin to use those other type of skills.
Right.
And what you're saying is that the music was perhaps a bit of distraction
Mm-hmm.
for you to get away from the immediate sensation, and you could then implement your other.
Exactly. And it's a case by case thing, because again, or what was it, 6 hour, 4 or 5 hour flight, and I a lot.
Well, and I was speaking to Sarah this morning about what thoughts are, and that we are not where we could control them. Have you ever with myself? Have I ever said yeah? Well, what does that tell you? Does that tell you that there's two of you?
No.
If you can't live with yourself, there are your thoughts, and then there's you. Often what we do with them is ask people to become the observer. Okay. And there's a whole scientific explanation behind that, which is limb system, primitive type of things where we were constantly vigilant, and constant vigilance. So, tiger.
And that's and actually that's one of the I think before I started coming here, I was very into, and I don't know where this is along stuff, but it sounds very much like the reptile brain and the fear. And there's a great book called Lynchpin by Seth Godin that talks about that, and that's where I get a lot of the run towards the, I know practically, right, and it's getting past that lizard brain, extending past that enough here.
Absolutely. So what we're asking individuals who may be viewing today is to allow themselves to step back and become the observer behind the thinker. How likely is it going to happen? Have you ever sat with anybody, Sarah, and you've said an explanation, and they've said, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? With somebody one day, Mike, and they kept asking me that. So I got up and I stared out the window. What are you doing? I said, I'm waiting for the zombie apocalypse. What if meteor? So the idea about mindfulness is being current with your experience, and quite often, I ask people, what time is it? So what time would it have been?
Right now, here in the seat in this plane, I'm good.
And you were able to
Right.
identify and label those emotions and deal with them in an effective way.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with them in an effective way.
Right.
So a little bit about, I know that you're shadow there. So when you're sitting folks here, tell us some.
Well, here at Seclair, I think the most thing they try to express is mindfulness, and that's very important, I think, and very relaxed. Like being relaxed and being mindful helps emotions, even fear, thoughts of that.
Absolutely. Fear is a corroding threat to people's lives, man. Absolutely. And it's fundamental. It's like you said, big brain, it's primitive type of things. And the idea is that the more we try to run away from something, the faster it chases us.
Mm-hmm.
The faster it chases us. So that's why we stay away from the thought blocking technique. We prefer not exactly confront something, Sarah, but learn how to deal with it in a mindful way.
Right.
And label with it. So only people out there that are taking a flight tomorrow, Mike?
That's no big deal. No, it's yeah, no. I think a lot of these will help in that first bit. I mean, I was really glad because a lot of people suggested, well, take a Benadryl or do this, or I didn't want to. I'm just like, no, let's see how I do. An option. It's completely safe. It's the old step that goes around. It's safer than so. And if you hear about it and how often does something happen, especially anything like that. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of things to make sure everything's secure and things and everything. So.
Sure. And alcohol is one thing we will not be prescribing here.
No, absolutely.
So the idea is that you use some of these distractions. Skill of distraction. Another skill is individuals go away from home. They situation. They perhaps take maybe a favorite little bunny rabbit or some type of stuffed animal. Pictures of home. Something that has some meaning, have some self-soothing and some comfort.
I took my wife.
You took your wife. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, that can be self-soothing also. Another thing is that we turn our mind. Okay. Let's say I'm afraid of Sarah, and you don't know how afraid I was of her. So there's Sarah, and I'm terrified of her. I'm terrified of her. Okay. However, the logo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I refocus it. Yes, she is. I'm not avoiding her. I'm not trying to make her go away. However, I've turned my mind. I've turned my mind to something else. So that's just one technique. Actually works. But however, action and effort that works in people's lives. It's not through talking. We can't think or feel our way into other behavioral change.
Right.
What we do are to. Okay, and I've shared with you before that when I for the first few meetings I went to, Mike, they would have these placards on the table that would say think, 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 and I would look at those and say, that's how I got here. So to enjoy yourself and be mindful and live in this present moment. I would like to Mike could share with us something that Seclair is going to be offering in the near future.
Yeah, coming up May 1st, 2015, this year. This is 2015, if you're watching. We are having this conference. We had a great time out there last May in 2024. Watch a lot of it on our Seclair Life on at seclair.com. We got a lot of great stuff going on. Information is going to be at Seclair. A lot of great speakers, including, of course, Dr. Shard is going to be there. You'll be around as well. Greg Nicosia, Ted Sibic, who we've had great conversations with, Daniel Wagner with NutriPharmacy.com, another great last year. James Weiner, of course, both Dr. Shaw, another great person we've had. Valentine Polo, and so many more unannounced, subject to change as always. But a lot of great discussions out at Chestnut Ridge Inn out in Blairsville, PA. To find out more about that conference, and keep an eye on all the social media: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube's, and we'll be putting.
And this conference is in a holistic psychiatric facility where we look at mind, body, and spirit. We look at every aspect of an individual's life. We never put people in boxes or label them as some type of disorder.
It's a lot, as the resident layman here. It's a very interesting conference. You're not going to be bored by this. A lot of great, good life advice. So for all over the board there, I get a lot out of it. Something like this with you guys. So definitely looking forward to that one.
Any closing thoughts from you today, Sarah?
Face your fears.
There you go.
Well, there you go. Well, that's the word for the day. Mike, any final thoughts for today?
No, nothing here.
And perhaps if you could
sure. If you want to continue this conversation, tell us about your fear of flying or whatever fears you conquered lately even. You can continue that. And again, like us on Facebook, plus us on Google+, follow us on Twitter, Sinclair, and keep an eye out for any of these for our next live recording. We usually do it here Mondays around noon. We don't have to be here. It's on the YouTube. Everything afterwards. You can also find this and other grand rounds and YouTube videos at youtube.com/Sinclair Video, and find audio versions. Look us up on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, or iHeartRadio, right next to your morning drive, guys. Maybe you can put us on instead of Mikey and Big Ball. Although I love those guys. I play baseball with them. They're awesome. And also, please visit Sinclair.com for articles on our great blog. I'm Mike with Sarah and Jim, who's here every week, and
my hope is that you'll continue to tune in. In the future, we'll be having such guests as Dr. Greg Nicosia, dealing with energy medicine. We'll be dealing with Ed Civic, who's Chinese medicine.
And a lot of people are going to be on that conference, and even on the YouTube channel right now. A lot of them are on, so you can get a little preview more about before you come out to that conference and get to meet them in person.
Dr. is a sleep physician with Paragala who deals with internal medicine. However, her is health and wellness physics, actually. With Dr. Safdar Chaudhry, Dr. Lori Lankowitz, who is a doctor of physics, and how that relates. So many people. We hope you join us in the future.
It's going to be very exciting 2015 for this.
Absolutely. And as always, we give you a free prescription, which would be fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and perhaps take up fishing. And I have my mindfulness 2015 and Dr. Ruth Ann Valentine, and we'll be fishing without bait. So until the next time, the order for the day is be good to yourself and be kind to yourself and be a compassionate being. Namaste.